Alright guys, I want to welcome you all back to some more of the Great Ace Attorney 2, where it looks like we finally finished this part of the trial and moving on to further investigation to the next story onward. So with that said guys, hope you all continue to enjoy watching, and let's keep it rolling. Alright guys, and we are back. But there's still something in the back of my mind. I feel I've seen something somewhere that hints at why the coroner might have done this. Yes, I might have tampered with the crime scene and concocted a fake report. But murdering someone for no reason is a very different story.
Objection!
No. When you question what possible reason you could have for wanting to kill Mr. Asman, something did come to mind. What? What was it, counsel? Enlighten the court at once. Yes, we saw it yesterday, didn't we? Something that seemed strange, but we had no reason to suspect it at the time. There's a particular object that explains why Dr. Sith would have wanted to kill Mr. Asman. It's the scalpels. It's a scalpel, or rather, scalpels. Did you say scalpels? It would appear that the word has struck a chord, Doctor. Ew. Come on, out with it. It was yesterday when we visited your laboratory. Look at this big thick book here. Ah, it appears to be a accounting ledger. It's a record of the forensic investigation team's spending, I think. Oh, what is it? It's clear that the team purchases various equipment and supplies on a monthly basis, but, well, one entry seems rather strange. Really? In what way? They're buying 500 scalpels every month. $500 scalpels? A month? At first, I wondered what on earth you could be using that many scalpels for. But actually, I realize now it's not the scalpels themselves that are significant. It's the money for them, disappearing every month from the department's accounts. Asman's criminal organization relied heavily on extortion for its funding. Tracing the money from the forensic investigation team's account to find out where it was going would be extremely straightforward. 10 years ago, when Mr. Asman was still a journalist and wrote this article about Mr. Drebber, he may well have stumbled upon information as he was researching the story. Information relating to Dr. Sith's darkest secret that he would use to rack money from her for the next decade. Darkest secret? Good lord! You mean... I don't know what happened on the night of that execution 10 years ago, but clearly the opportunity to rid yourself of that menace was too tempting to pass up. So in the end, you weren't coerced at all, were you? You did it entirely of your own free will. You stabbed Mr. Asman in the heart with all your might. To silence the blackmailer who knew your dark secret forever. You'll never understand. None of you. But we've had to keep covered up all these long years. As very little of the machine remains after it was ripped apart by the bomb. The truth of this case can never be properly established unless you speak out. And if you decide not to, it's very possible that Courtney Sith will escape punishment for her crimes. Please, sir, own up to what you've done and tell the court the truth about what happened. 10 years ago, you told the truth, and you were robbed of a bright and successful future as a result. I can certainly understand your bitterness and your consternation now. However, this is surely the chance you've been waiting for, to sever the hold that fate's had over you all these years. Super high voltage instantaneous kinesis. I mean, really. It's the addle-brained mock scientists that are the worst, you know. They don't recognize the fact that they don't have talent. They can't even get that right. And so they end up chasing impossible dreams, having unbridled faith in their abilities. They go on and on about their wonderful hypothesis, their stupid eyes shining like a little child's. They make me sick. I can't abide their foolishness. Careful, Mr. Drebber. I was particularly pleased with the kinesis machine. It made for quite a show, didn't it? So you admit it. You admit that it was nothing more than a sham made for the purpose of killing the victim. Yes, I admit it. I did it all in the name of revenge. Revenge for the future that Mr. Asmon's article had deprived you of 10 years earlier. But the revenge you sought didn't stop at Asmon, did it? Which is where that very particular waxwork comes in, yes, I see. The condemned convict that you saw rising from the grave in Lowgate Cemetery 10 years ago. If your account of those events was all true, then obviously Scotland Yard couldn't afford to acknowledge what had happened. Even if it meant discrediting a bright young man and crushing any future career he might have had. So your plan required that you abduct that particular waxwork model in order to exact your revenge on Scotland Yard as well, or on Dr. Sid to be precise. It was a year ago. By some extraordinary twist of fate, Asmon turned up at my workshop. He didn't remember who I was, of course. He just wanted to employ my services as an engineer. And yet happened to have a paper with him. An article on the front page caught my eye. About the coroner who handled the bogus autopsy being appointed head of the new forensic team. When I learned that news, my cognitive processes started to devise the plan. What a horrid tale. He robbed me of my future, so I wanted to use the man's own wiles against him for revenge. And have that rotten Scotland Yard eating out of my hand at the same time. I wanted them all to suffer the same humiliation I'd had to suffer. Your actions against those who'd ruined your future were justified as revenge, at least to yourself. Certainly, no one has the right to destroy another's prospects, especially for purely selfish gain. And yet, in carrying out your plan, you did exactly that to someone else, didn't you? Did I? Professor Harebrain's only crime was passion for his hypothesis, but you had no compunction about sacrificing his future to effect your revenge. You knew that he would be forever branded a failure and a fraud. Perhaps life treated you unfairly 10 years ago and others' misconduct left your life in tatters. But remember this. Your own actions resulted in exactly the same thing for another perfectly innocent young man. Lord Van Zeeks, what of Dr. Sid? An immediate warrant for her arrest has been granted and she's been remanded in custody, my lord. I presume she will face trial in the coming days along with Mr. Drebber. A most regrettable situation indeed. She's made great contributions to her profession over the years. It really is a hard truth to swallow. However, that is a topic for some future occasion. For now, Professor Harebrain. Oh, yes? It seems there was a great deal more to your experiment than you realized. However, I think we can assume now that all the sordid details have been brought to light. This has been a very long and profound trial, but I'm pleased to say you are absolved of all guilt. This whole experience has taught me a very great but painful lesson. This dedicated scientist, this devotee of natural philosophy. I've been selfish and self-centered and above all, a fool. Professor, I've spent my life thinking of nothing but my research. Misguidedly believing that I could do whatever I set my mind to despite my lack of talent. And the worst of it is, in the process I've caused others pain and misery. Others who are far, far greater people than I. No, Professor, that's not true. What? Don't tar yourself with the same brush as Drebber. What happened was his doing and his alone. This outcome's his fate, not yours. You're not to blame in any way. Lord Van Zieks. And the derision with which he referred to you earlier, calling you a fool, talentless even. The man has no idea. To believe in yourself and your work, and work your fingers to the bone to realize your dreams, that's laudable, not laughable. No one has the right to deride another for such choices. Oh. Thank you, Barrack. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, yes, my lord. It is the court's expectation that you find the defendant not guilty of the charge of which he stands accused. I presume there are no objections. None from me, my lord. Certainly not. This trial has really made me think, but this is the right decision. It's all been proven methodically and vigorously. I have no misgivings whatsoever. What's that? He's done, is he? It's all over? I don't know what's become of the yard these days. I don't recognize the place. Very well. In that case, I hereby pronounce the defendant with prolonged lagging people not guilty. Woo! There's that confetti again. Court is adjourned. It's over. That was some trial. (24th of October, 4:33 p.m., the Old Bailey Defendant's Antechamber. Professor! What a splendid outcome, isn't it? Oh, it is! It is! Congratulations, Professor Hairbrain! Mr. Naruhodo, Mrs. Sato, I am truly beside myself in gratitude. How can I ever thank you enough? I'm just glad it's all been cleared up. That you realized you were just caught up in a bad situation. Right now, you know, if I had that research grant money, I'd give the whole lot to you, every penny. Well, that's very kind, but I'm just a student, so we don't need any financial reward. Your acquittal is more than enough. Oh dear, what can I do? Aha! How about this, as a memento? The paper about my hypothesis is inside. Well, just as a memento then. Thank you. I've been wondering, Professor, what are you going to do now? Oh my, yes. What am I going to do? My hypothesis and my great machine lie in ruins. But still, it's been too long since I was last in London, so perhaps I'll enjoy some sightseeing. I must explore the great exhibition whilst I'm here too, and see if new inspiration hits me. Oh yes, that's a wonderful I can't allow that. Lord Van Zieks, what are you doing in here? Barrack. I'm sorry you had to go through that, Albert. Well, if I'm honest, it was terrifying. You were like a great demon behind your bench there, snarling down on your prey. You're one of the very few true friends I have. I couldn't have leave it to anybody else to handle this prosecution or the defense. Sorry? Or the defense? Did I just hear that right? I always knew that you had my best interest at heart, don't worry. How about you show me around while I'm here in town? It's been a long time since we left university. We have a lot to catch up on. Listen, Albert. In a few days, your acquittal will be made official. When that happens, you must head straight to Dover. I'll accompany you. What? From there, you'll cross the channel and make your way back to Germany. I've already purchased the tickets. But But no! Hold on a minute, Barrack. What about the great exhibition? This a No. No sightseeing, Albert. Give up on the idea. Sometimes it's hard to see any warmth in those eyes, Barrack. Lord Van Zeeks? What's all this about? A necessary precaution. Yes, I think I understand. You do? Well, Iris told me that when you met Lord Van Zeeks at his office some days ago, he asked how Mr. Natsume was doing. Yes, that's right. I remember being surprised at the time and thinking it was nice of him to ask. The point is, Mr. Natsume is still alive and well. Even though it's been more than 6 months now since he stood trial with the Reaper as the prosecutor. Ah, you mean the Reaper's influence doesn't stretch overseas. Those in the Reaper's sights meet their ends days or sometimes months after their acquittal. That's been the pattern up to now. But of course we know that both Mr. Natsume and Gina were completely innocent. True. And perhaps that governs the Reaper's actions. The truly innocent are spared. But I don't want to take any chances with a close personal friend. But Barrack! Like the mustached Nipponese, this man should leave the country without delay. That's why I'm packing him off to Germany at once. Right. Does your friend-shaped package get any say in it? Goodness! Was this your intention all along then, Lord Van Zeeks? In court, where people think of him as the Reaper, this man seems absolutely merciless, and yet, sometimes, I feel as though I don't understand him at all. It's time to go, Albert. Back to the prison for the time being. Ah, yes. Alright. Well then, Mr. Naruhodo. Thank you so much for everything. Not at all, Professor. It was a pleasure getting to know you. Best wishes, Professor Hairbrain. Well, once the dust is settled, you must come and visit me in Germany. Anyway, goodbye for now. Now, my Nipponese friend. Oh, yes? I thought you'd gone too. We have matters to discuss. Can you spare me some time? You want to talk with me? I'll be waiting in the courtroom in 10 minutes. Well, that was strange. For some reason, I didn't get the sense of impending doom as he walked away this time. The Enigma Barrack Van Zeeks. What does he want to discuss, I wonder? The answer awaits in the courtroom, I suppose. Here goes then. October 24th, 4:58 p.m., the Old Bailey courtroom. So, are you satisfied? You saved a guileless scientist from a great injustice. Yes, I think so. I'm relieved at least that the man's innocence could be proven. Anyway, I imagine you've been wondering where my animosity towards you Nipponese comes from. Well, at first I thought you just didn't like me. I imagine you saw me as a pretentious child from an unimportant land who had no business being here. But now, I think differently. You clearly know our ways, so I would guess that some specific incident led to your thorough dislike of my race. Will you tell me what happened, please? The Professor. I thought I'd never hear that name in this courtroom again, to be honest. He took your brother's life. Clint. My brother Clint Van Zeeks. 16 years ago, when I was still just in my teens, he was already the director of prosecutions and a key member of the judiciary. I looked up to him. He was everything I aspired to be. He was involved in the establishment of justice systems in foreign countries as well. There were exchange programs between Britain and our other nations then too, to share knowledge and ideas. As part of one of those programs, 3 judicial students came to Britain from your homeland, the Empire of Japan. Oh, if it was 16 years ago then, one of them could have been my father. Of course, I remember Dr. Mikotoba well. I had no idea. I was a minor at the time, training at the prosecutor's office. One day, Clint introduced me to 3 visiting Nipponese. So, you've actually met my father. He and his colleagues were polite and amicable. They were adept at their work and exacting in their standards. It was my first encounter with the Nipponese spirit, and it made a very great impression upon me. But 6 years later, that's when it happened. The investigation was going nowhere. There were no suspects even. Just an ever-growing list of victims. And in the end, my brother became one of them. The last, in fact, before the case was finally resolved. I'm so sorry, Lord Van Zieks, truly. Clint was always ready to put his life on the line for justice anyway. So he wouldn't have wanted it any other way. He lost his life to the killer, but it was his victory in the end. For me personally, though, it was a great loss. I found myself in a very dark place indeed. When I finally found out the killer's identity, the reason why no one had been able to catch the man sooner ceased to be such a mystery. He'd been hiding in plain sight all the time. In plain sight? Are you aware of political events 10 years ago? It was a period of extreme sensitive diplomacy between the British and Japanese empires. A new treaty was being forged, I think. Correct. The Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Friendship and Navigation was being concluded. The leaders of both countries were deep in extensive political discussions. Which is why this particular killer's appearance in court was conducted as a closed trial. If the British public had known the identity of the killer, not only would the treaty have been in jeopardy, but our two nations could very well have ended up at war. What? A war? Between Britain and Japan? But that would mean... Oh my! You mean to say the professor was...
When the trial reached its conclusion earlier, I thought to myself, yes, it's time. Time for you to come face to face with this hideous monster. I borrowed the key for the mask from the proprietress of the Waxwork Museum. So see for yourselves now. Confirm it with your own eyes. The truth that's been hidden this past decade.
That's the professor?
Yes, that's him.
Until now, the thought never even crossed my mind. That the mass murderer, whose crimes shook Britain as never before, was Japanese!
Wait a minute. That face. I feel as though I've seen it somewhere. It's strangely familiar.
Father.
Whoa.
What? Father? Kazuma!
The billowing bandana is back.
My best friend, Kazuma Asogi. After a whole year, finally his memories returned. As he stood there before me, Ryunosuke. Hello again. My friend.
Kazuma-sama!
Judicial Assistant Mikotoba. It's been a very long road. Thank you. Thank you for guiding my friend here when I could not.
It was an honor.
I knew you wouldn't die that easily. Kazuma.
I owe you thanks, too, for taking good care of that in my absence.
Oh. Karuma, a great blade of the Asogi clan, passed down through the generations. When we left Japan, this sword was at my friend's side. A Japanese man's katana is his soul, and he couldn't be parted from it. But then, when the incident happened, it was Susato-san's wish that I inherit the sword, and I've kept it with me ever since, along with my memories of the friendship we shared. With this by my side, I always felt that you were watching over me somehow.
I've made it. At last. Father.
Are you saying... Surely not. You mean, you knew all this time? I'm looking at it, but I still can't believe it. This mass murderer is Kazuma's father.
Kazuma-sama.
Ryunosuke, we have much to talk about, but now is not the time. I'll be seeing you.
That's all Kazuma said. Before he turned and left us there, in the courtroom.
So he's the living after image of the man who took my brother's life, is he? Yes, Kazuma Asogi, my best friend. 3 months ago when Lord Strongheart introduced us, I had an inkling there was something there, some connection. But why did Lord Strongheart do that? Why did he make Kazuma Lord Van Zeke's apprentice, and when he was suffering amnesia too? The man was apprehended, even executed, but his legacy just won't die. That's the sad truth. Anyway, that's all I had to say. I thank you for meeting with me as I asked. "10 years ago, my grandmother took me to the railway station. We were there to meet my father from the train. For me, It was the first time I'd ever seen him. Poor Susato-san. All this is tied up with painful memories for her too. She's never talked about this with me before though. It took some time to adjust to having father around, but just when I was starting to get used to it, he called me into his study one day. He told me that a great friend of his had passed away in London, and that the friend had left behind a son, a boy, 7 years my senior. Father told me the boy had made a promise to his late father, so he was studying to become a defense lawyer. I wanted to help, so I studied to become a qualified judicial assistant. As I'm sure you've worked out, that young man's name was Kazuma Asugi. So you see, that's how he and I met.
For a brief moment, my great friend had returned, only to disappear again all too soon. But in that fleeting encounter, something stirred. Something that had been dormant for a long time. As if great wheels had been set in motion. I could almost hear them creaking into life. In some ways, it was the end of a chapter, but in many, it was the start of a new one.
Alright guys, I'm gonna end the video here for today. Thank you all for watching. Definitely love that cinematic sequence near the end. So if anything else guys, we'll continue on in the next one. Thank you all for watching.